Welcome to the Personal Development Mastery Podcast. Stand out, don't fit in. Today I have the real pleasure to be speaking with an extraordinary individual. He is a senior trainer with Tony Robbins, an NLP trainer and an international speaker. He studied biology at Oxford University, but soon realized that was not for him. And then he went into investment banking and became a millionaire at 31, only to realize that richness was not just about money. He is now a coach and mentor, coaching peak performance to get rich, not only financially, but also emotionally and time rich. And he's the founder of the Be the Difference Today movement. Rich Waterman, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to be speaking with you.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much for the introduction and really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have today.
So am I. Rich, I wanted to start just by asking you to give us a brief background, but mainly what I would be most interested in, it would be any one or two key defining moments in your journey that led you to where you are at the moment.
So that's a great question. So if I'm looking at the key defining moments, I think one of the first ones was, I remember my final year at Oxford. I was one of those kids that I was very lucky that I found school and things like that quite easy. So I would do not a lot of work to get the results I wanted. And it kind of like I had the structure around me. So like I knew what the rules of the game were, and I was lucky that I was good at the game. And I remember the final year at Oxford, I was thinking, okay, what do I want to do for a job? And I sat in the careers office and I had so much choice in terms of what I could do. And I ended up in tears. I just was crying because it was probably the first time in my life that I had real choice. And I was completely overwhelmed by it. Now now my whole life is driven by the desire of creating more choice. But at that time, it was a very, very alien concept to me, and I couldn't deal with it at all. I think another one that springs to mind was about 2 or 3 years into banking, I realised that it definitely wasn't what I wanted to do. I went into it because I didn't know. When I was at Oxford, I was like, I don't know what to do. Let me do something competitive and that pays well, and then I'll work out the rest later on. So I went into banking. I knew nothing about banking. It took me about 2 or 3 years to get really good at it. And then I realised that I hated it. I really hated it. And I had a young family at the time as well, and I was living in obligation. Like I felt I had to go in and do the job. We'd created a lifestyle that fitted in around the amount of money that I was bringing in. And I didn't feel I had any choice. Again, finding this showing up again, right? And the only thing that changed that was me getting really ill. I basically had various stress-related diseases and going through a divorce because I became someone that was stressed and not particularly nice to be around. And there are other factors as well, but I can't really blame the fact my wife decided that she would rather be with someone else. And that moment in time, even though it's probably one of the most painful times of my life, and there might be people listening to this that are going through painful times or have been through painful times. It wasn't a nice thing to go through, but it was the greatest gift I've ever had. Because it woke me up to what was important in life. And it was and still is my family, my 4 children, spending more time with them, slowing life down and appreciating what was truly important. I think those are 2 things. If I was the third one was is basically and this is probably more of a lesson throughout my life, which is the understanding that it's who I am and who I choose to be, as opposed to what I do. So that's what defines me. Yes, I've done some things that I'm really proud of, and you put them on your CV and you talk about them, and I provided you some of the information for the introduction, right, about being a senior trainer for Robbins and all these other things. But it's actually, I think, the growing understanding and feeling of who I am as a person, who, you know, that me being me is enough. And I'm still on that journey. That's probably the other lesson that I learned. I'm sure there are others that will come up as we talk, but those are three that really spring to mind.
It's an ongoing journey, a lifelong journey. I don't think there is ever an end to that journey. And I made some notes already about what you did. You said about choice, which it's extremely important. And sometimes we think we have choice, but we don't really have, because we follow without really thinking. Unconsciously, we do something over and over again. So,
yeah.
And also you said about sacrificing health for sustaining a lifestyle, which again, it's something that many people, I believe, they do. They have the priorities mixed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Health should be number one, shouldn't it?
Yeah, and it's easily done, right? Because, you know, the society we live in, you know, you need money to pay for things. And we're seeing it right now. We're seeing it playing out right now in terms of you know, we're recording this, the coronavirus going on, and you can see actually there's almost a fight between we need to keep the economy going versus we need to keep people healthy. And I totally get that, you know, extremes of both can create massive problems. What I have learned, I guess, is through the periods of my life when I've not had health, if you don't have that energy, you don't have that vitality, nothing else works. So it doesn't matter how much money you've got in the bank. If you're ill, you soon realize what the top priority needs to be, which is to be healthy and vital. While also not ignoring the fact that, you know what, we live in an economy and there are certain factors that we have to abide by. As you said, there are certain things that, you know, I choose to live in a country that has these laws and rules, and I have to pay taxes and all these things. So that's a reality too, because I've seen, you know, I've have some very good friends of mine that are really into health and spirituality, and actually maybe are not serving themselves because they don't pay enough attention to the financial and economic side. So there is a balance, I think, but yeah, health has to come first for me every time.
Yeah, you know the phrase, they say that a healthy person can have 1,000 wishes. A sick person only has one.
Yes. That's brilliant. I've heard. I haven't heard it said that way, but that's absolutely true, isn't it? It's like, you know, you just want to be. I had a stomach sickness earlier on this week, and the only thing I'm thinking about is getting better, right? So, yeah, I'm not thinking about how much money's in my bank. So,
how did you start with Tony Robbins, Rich?
It's a really good question. So, I was kind of like interested in sort of psychology and mindset before I went to my first Tony event. There were a couple of things really. So when I went through this pretty messy divorce in 2001, and this is all related to being stressed out as a banker. So I left banking at that point. My wife at the time actually went off with one of her friend's husbands. So that was quite a local scandal at the time. And then after a few weeks, I ended up with the other partner. So it was like a time-delayed wife swap in many ways. The challenge with that is I never really processed probably the full emotional pain of the divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So when that second relationship broke up about 3 years later, I kind of stacked the breakup of that relationship on top of the breakup of my divorce and went into a really difficult place. So in end of 2004, 2005, I had really bad depression, like bad. But I went and end up going, I had my own house. I actually went up and spent quite a lot of time living with my parents. Was on antidepressants. I don't know, really felt they did a lot for me, but probably just kept me balanced. And really, really struggled for a while. And then I think I just got to a point where my brain started to get a bit fed up of being in that state. And I saw, I believe I was watching Oprah Winfrey, and Tony Robbins was on there. She was referring to Tony Robbins, and I thought that guy looks interesting. And so I signed up for his Unleash the Power Within event at the start of 2006. Didn't know what I was getting myself into at all. I think a lot of people maybe are like that. And I went along. For me, it was like I was 35 years old at the time, nearly 36, and I'm thinking, I need to understand my brain and why I'm on this planet. And I got that from the event and ended up doing all the courses and so on and so forth. But it was interesting that coming away from that first event, UPW, such a strong desire to speak about it with others, to coach, to basically spread the gifts that I'd received. So that's how it all started. And then basically, like many, became a bit addicted to it and just carried on with the journey.
The word addicted, even though it's probably not the most appropriate in this way, it tends to have some negative. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
And what made you step into the trainer place within the Tony Robbins community?
Yeah. So Tony, one of the sort of key pieces of Tony's content are these 6 human needs. So certainty and variety being a part of a pair, significance, love and connection being a pair. And then there's 2 interesting ones, I think. It's his contribution and growth. And what I realized was that in my very heart and my core, I was really, really driven by contribution and growth. So staying in the Robbins environment, so going through all the courses as a participant, is an opportunity to then go into leadership. And for me, that was ticking all the boxes of I can grow my knowledge more, but more importantly, I can grow more as a person. And interestingly, coming into the environment, I probably was thinking about adding things to what I had, but actually a lot of it is stripping away layers and masks and kind of myths about yourself and stripping back to who you really are. And from that space, being not only able to help myself, to contribute to myself, but also being able to help others, like that's definitely one of the most powerful experiences in my life, is being able to use not only Tony's tools, but also just being me again to help others. So that's why I carried on through the leadership journey. So you do a program called Leadership Mastery. So you end up re-attending some of the events and also a newer event that Tony did called Leadership Academy, which is more skills. How does Tony do his stuff? And from there, you can apply to become a senior leader. So a senior leader is someone that assists at Tony's events and assists the Robbins trainers. And then in 2012, I was one of 3 people to be promoted to trainer. So actually the master trainers, the top of the tree, they choose people to become trainers. And as a trainer, you get to lead groups at Tony's events. So if you have like a big event of like 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, whatever it is, particularly some of his the events after UPW, we tend to split people into groups of about 60 or 70 so that they can there's kind of a more intimate environment that we can sit in the room together. We can do the journey together. We have a morning meeting where I will facilitate it, share some wisdom, get shares from people, etc. So I'm very privileged that I get to look after a group of people that will go through one of his events, and I might do some coaching with them if needed. And then, that's the role of the trainer. And then I was very, very privileged about 4 years later then to be promoted to senior trainer, which was, that was, for me, that was, it felt like a confirmation of who I was as a person. I was being rewarded for who I was, not what I was doing, which was pretty cool. Yeah. And it's the position to be able to impact others, impact others through contribution. So it's such a gift to be able to do that, and get opportunities to you were talking about Chuck Hogan before we came on. I had the privilege of being able to run crew at London UPW a few years back. It's like one of the greatest experiences I've ever had, to worked with hundreds of people who were all serving in their own way as well.
Yeah. For me, it's fairly new, the experience of being at Tony Robbins environment. I mean, I crewed for the first time last year, and of course, looking forward to crew this year. I'll have to wait for a little bit longer because of the coronavirus, or the events have been postponed. But the environment and especially what you said about the growth and the contribution at the same time, it's an incredible place of both serving and leading at the same time. So I really enjoyed it. Shall we talk about contribution a little bit more? Because I know that it has influenced you very much and it has shaped your life. So why is contribution so important?
I'll give you the shorter version. Otherwise, we'll be here all day. But so definitely the journey, the awareness of contribution definitely changed going through my experience in Tony's events. I think probably before that, my association with contribution was more things like charity, giving money to charity, doing sponsored things, and so on and so forth. And then I think with this kind of giving back of yourself piece became bigger as I was going through the Tony environment. The real changing point, which was probably if I was going to say, is there one moment in my life that has defined everything that I now do? It was a moment in 2014. It was I remember the day. It was 23rd of July 2014, and I got another really good friend in the environment, George Coutinho, and his daughter Leonore had she'd been being treated for cancer. She had basically kidney cancer, and normally this stuff is very treatable, but they caught it quite late. But she'd been getting treatment in Lisbon Hospital, and I was under the impression that it was going pretty well. Not spoken to him for a bit, and then it was really late one night. I was on Facebook. I should have been going to sleep. I was going to Europe, Disneyland Paris at about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I got a message from George that said, "Are you there, Rich?" And I nearly just ignored it because I thought I need to be asleep. Thankfully I said yes, that I was. And he explained that basically they'd come back from the hospital with Leonore, and they said that there was nothing more they could do. That really all they could do was to keep her as pain-free as possible until she died. I've got 4 children of my own. I was just, this is George's only daughter. I was just didn't even know what to say. And then he told me that he had an opportunity to get some revolutionary treatment in Germany. That they need to get her there as quickly as possible, and that it was going to be very expensive treatment, 30,000 euros plus. And George had spent the last year basically not really working, just looking after his daughter, so he used up pretty much all his money. And so he asked if I could help raise the money, and he said that still gets me even now. He said that I was the first person he thought of to help. And the emotions that went through me that time in terms of having that level of responsibility. Brain was going, I'm flying off to Paris. There's not going to be great internet there at that time. How do I do this? I mustn't fail. I've got to do it. And I just said, look, George, book the flights to Germany. We'll get the money. We'll sort the money out. And it's one of the best uses of social media I've ever seen. I just basically just shared this. And I said, look, this is what's going on. We need help. Can you help? And the number of people that just stepped up and just gave money. Some of them didn't have money, so they organized auctions or other people. Some people gave their time. It's just this desire to contribute and help this little girl. And within 5 days, we'd raised the 30,000 euros. 7 days, I think we're up to 40,000. We just put a stop on it because we didn't know how much money we needed. I was just blown away by that. And I'm seeing this again in the current times, is like just people's kindness and showing love for another human being. And that what was really fascinating was Leonore was 5 years old at the time, this little girl. We called her the Pink Princess because she loves pink. The reason we called her the Princess was she was in obviously tremendous pain from the disease and the treatment, but all she'd been back was love. She just kept on doing videos and messages about how much she loved everyone, and thank you so much for giving me a chance to come to Germany. And what I realised how closely linked love and contribution are. It really is. For me, contribution is the ultimate expression of love. And so we went on this journey together. It was like about a month of getting treatment, and seeming like things were going well. And then bizarrely, I went to a Robbins event. I think I was in Tenerife, I believe. And there's one exercise where people just dance around the room with this crazy kind of uncontrolled, chaotic dancing. Amazing to watch, like amazing energy. I'm not just blown away by it. And I was sat in a corner of the room watching this. And then I got the news through that she died. And I'm like, I felt really cheated. Felt really cheated. Like that was not the outcome. So much amazing energy around helping her. That was not the outcome. That was wrong. That was. And then you go through a period of obviously anger about it. Acceptance. And I spoke to George, her dad, and he said, right, the only way this makes sense to me is if I give it meaning. I have to give her life and the fact that she passed meaning. And he's through that process, I've kind of created another brother, basically, in many ways. And he goes around, he talks about her life and the message of her life, that the message was passed to us through this love and contribution. And she didn't need to be in that mortal body anymore. Her message had been passed. That's how he talks about it. And he helps parents that have lost their own children to make more sense of it, which is an amazing thing. My own journey on that, if we've got time to talk about it, is I was looking to make more sense of it myself, what my role had been in it, really just a coordinator of this fundraising and being there for my friend. And we have a thing at Robbins events where we raise money for Tony Robbins Foundation, which is a charity that does amazing things. It's involved in poor neighborhoods. It does an amazing program called Global Youth Leadership Summit, which basically brings teenagers from around the world and gives them leadership skills to take back into their community. It's amazing. It's an amazing foundation. And one of my roles as a trainer is when I have a team in an event, we will, towards the end, we will talk about Tony's foundation and ask if people would like to donate some money. Don't have to, it's up to them. We have a bit of a fun competition with it. We see who can raise the most money, and the one that does sits at the front of the room the final day and things like that. So it's making it a bit lighter and a bit more fun.
Yeah.
And when I knew I was close to becoming a Tony Robbins trainer, I absolutely dreaded doing that talk, the prospect of doing that talk, because I thought, it's selling stuff to people. And then I realized, of course, it's not. It's just asking whether people want to contribute or not. And that year, after Leonore died, at the first event, I shared her story and said, that's like this expression of love for another human being or beings. For me, is contribution. And I said, just decide what you want to contribute. And something happened because my team raised 4 times more money than any one other team. And I'm like, this is interesting. And the head trainer, Tad Chinky, asked me, what did you do? And I went, I don't think it was what I did. I think it was how I chose to be and how I asked other people to be. So it's going to come back to this being space. And he said, great, can we teach other people how to do that? So the next event, I trained the other trainers about how I spoke about Leonore. So you don't need to speak about her as such, but it's a contribution piece. Love. And that was interesting that year because I had a Japanese team, all Japanese, 100, about nearly, I think 80 to 100 people, probably about about 85 people maybe. I don't speak Japanese. I had a couple of amazing leaders in my team that translated for me live.
Mm-hmm.
And said to them about this contribution piece, and they went, we're going to have a problem there because the Japanese don't really have the culture of giving money charity. They do things differently. I don't claim to understand it, but I went, okay, well, that's fine. I'm just going to spend the week helping them to get into their hearts, and we'll see how we go.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, day before the speech, one of the leaders comes up to me and said, Rich, I've heard what you're talking about, contribution and love. I would like to do the contribution speech, the foundation speech, to my people, to the Japanese people, and I want to talk about Japanese suicide. I'd like you to talk about Leonore as well, and we'll translate it. And my brain was freaking out because I'm like, no, this is my thing. This is what I do. I went, no, it's the right thing to do. So this guy's name was Chris Okazaki. He stood up in front of not only our team, but we got all the other Japanese teams together. There was about 180, 200 Japanese at the whole event. We got them all together in one big group.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris spoke to them about contribution and coming from the heart, and about the problem they have with teenage suicides in Japan.
Yeah.
And these Japanese that apparently don't go into their hearts that much, I was looking across, as Chris was talking, I was looking across the crowd, and I could see them all. They're starting to tear up, and then there was tears flowing down their cheeks. I was getting a translation into English from my other leader at the time, and so I've had about a 2-second delay. I'm starting crying as well. And at that whole event, we raised, so we do speeches for about 15, 20 minutes. That whole event raised $1.3 million.
Wow.
And that was a record for an event. Tony said that was a record at that point. And the Japanese, our Japanese team was the top team out of however many teams it was. It must have been probably, I don't know, 30 teams, 30, 40 teams, raised $186,000 from Japanese people that do not have cultural references to charity.
I suppose the culture comes second. The human nature and the feelings and who we are in our core is much more stronger than whatever cultural beliefs we might have been imposed upon us.
That's a beautiful summary. Absolutely, absolutely. Like there's a more powerful force than cultural beliefs.
Yeah.
And then the next event in Australia wasn't even there, and I trained people remotely, and they set a record. The Aussies are amazing. They raised like $800,000 or like $1 million in a much smaller event.
Mm-hmm.
That was phenomenal, and it went from there. And then that Christmas, I was just driving along in my car. I was going to pick up my kids, and I was trying to make sense of what all it was. At that point, it was more of a feeling than words. Now, what does this all mean? And then the phrase "be the difference today" came into my head, because I was like, people talk a lot about making a difference. The problem with making a difference is like, I don't really know what the recipe is for making something, making a difference. And it also almost implies to make a difference, almost like I need something, I need resources, or I might need money, or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this phrase "be the difference today," and I'm like, okay, it's about being space, because being the difference, being of value or contribution to someone, that just needs you to be you, to express love, either express love to yourself or express love to others. So the expression "be the difference today" came into my head, and I pulled my car over to the side of the road and just couldn't stop crying. It was just like flooding out, and all these cars are going past, and they'll think, "Oh, that guy's pretty upset." They probably thought I got given really bad socks for Christmas or something. I don't know, but it was. That was the moment. That's where "Be the Difference Today" was created, and like I created frameworks and stuff since. But it was all from that point of that little girl who we helped, who brought everyone back to the absolute essence of human life, which to me is love. Loving selves and loving others is contribution. and it is just comes down to love, and that's really all the work I do now is variants of how do you love yourself more, how do you love others more. That's be the difference today.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautifully said. And yeah, what's more important than loving ourselves and others. There is something that I've picked up so far in our conversation. You've mentioned a few times about the differentiation between being and doing. Even now with your being a difference rather than making a difference, or what you said earlier about who I am versus what I do. And I think that's very important really for anyone to understand that it is, what's the phrase, we're human beings, not human doings.
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah. I really, really strongly agree with that. It's like, it's very easy to keep score for yourself based on what you do. It's an easy thing that you got a bank balance, right? Let me value me and my existence by the amount of money in my bank. Like a lot of people do that. I did it. It's important because you got to pay bills and things. Let me judge myself by the grades I get in exams, or how well I do at school, or what university I went to, and what job I do, and what car I drive, and the holidays I go on. And it's an easy trap to fall into sometimes. And don't get me wrong, I've got a nice car outside. I go on nice holidays. I live in a nice house. I enjoy all that. And yet that does not define my self-worth.
Absolutely.
And it also does not define how I judge others. And if I'm honest, it probably did in the past. Like, and I know that some people almost will push wealth away though, because they associate that with bad things. And I did that partly after I went through my divorce, and I blamed a lot of it on being a banker. I'm like, I don't want to earn a lot of money at the moment. For quite a few years, I didn't, because I didn't want to. And I don't think that's smart either. It's just an acceptance of, like, you are a valuable human being in the world, and you just being you. And I think that is what we call heart space, coming from the heart, expression of love, expression of yourself. The head's useful because it can guide things and provide input, but there's a lack of depth. If you lead from the head space, there's a lack of depth. It's like in my opinion, it's a shallow existence. But equally, I wouldn't want people to dismiss wealth generation as being something that is evil or unnecessary. Sometimes it's very, very useful. You see a lot of people doing a lot of good. Like I've got a friend of mine. I'm gonna call him out. He doesn't. In fact, two of them actually. They don't seek publicity at all. But I'm actually going to recognise them today because I just think they're phenomenal human beings. So two of my fellow trainers in the Robbins environment. There's a guy called Dennis Lindbergh and there's a guy called Nick Stanners. Both of them have created very high levels of wealth through their business activities. And they are both two of the most amazing, deep, lovely human beings you could choose to meet in your life. And both of them choose to spend significant amounts of their time doing good. Whether it's Nick's got a project where he recycles Christmas trees for charity, amongst other things. I just pick one of those, one of the things he does. Dennis, he's involved in mining operations. So him and his wife go into very poor areas and massively improve health and education in those areas. So like areas where sometimes adult life expectancy can be like early 30s. So they work very hard to improve the living conditions of, and to change mining practices that sometimes use really destructive heavy metals. They use like water and things like that to do it. So it's two great examples there of people that have created incredible wealth in their life, and yet they choose the being space. I've never asked them, has it always been that way? I suspect maybe not, like myself. But I think anyone listening to this, I would encourage them, don't make it either or. You can have being space and you can create wealth both for yourself and for others, and choose what you want to do with it. I think just don't lead with it. if your life is driven by success in business for success's sake, to have like a title or a salary or something like that, then I think that can be a mistake potentially. Yeah.
I see. I understand what you mean, and I think it's common misconception people that it's either or, as you said. So making money is at the expense of your of cultivating your spirit or anything else. Whereas I think in many ways it is parallel, or it should be parallel, because in order to create this kind of wealth, I'm talking financial, you have to change and evolve and grow as a person, and growth is by the way, just wanted to your answer to a quick question. What does, because we mentioned spirituality, what does this term mean to you?
Oh, that's a really good question. So growing up, obviously I grew up in England. Church of England is a fairly prominent force. Like, at school you sing hymns and do prayers, and you go to church at certain times of the year and things like that. Was never really my thing. I found it all. I found the Church of England, and there's no disrespect to them, I just found the whole thing boring. It didn't resonate with me at all.
I can relate. I'm Greek Orthodox, so it's I can relate.
and I think credit where credit's due. I think these organisations were created to try and create some structure and formalise spirituality, and like for some people it really works. My own journey with spirituality was going to Robbins events, and when everyone was so open and exploring their own space, there's this amazing feeling of feeling connected with other human beings. Like there was a higher energetic connection, and that's really my first exploration of spirituality. To a point where I went to my first Date with Destiny event, which is a few thousand people. I think it was probably about 2,000 people. And I went with about 12 other people that I knew to varying degrees. And by the end of the event, which is a 6-day event, at break time, which we don't have many of, as you know, in Robbins, I don't have many breaks. I didn't have to go looking for those people. I knew where every single one of them was. I could actually feel where they were, and I could go immediately and find them. And it's just like the most bizarre experience ever. So for me, spirituality, though, it's our link through to this universal force that connects us all. There is, in my opinion, there is definitely some sort of universal energy that connects all of us. When I'm at my best, when I'm doing a speech in Tony Robbins event, talking about the foundation stuff, talking about Leonore, in that moment, I cease to exist. It's just universe just flowing through me, putting a bit of rich Waterman flavor on it, and then just flowing out again. I've dissolved into something else, and it's actually the most wonderful feeling of emptiness and nothingness, which sounds like two horrible words, but they're not. It's the most tremendous feeling of just dissolving into the rest of the universe. And when I'm speaking at my best, when I'm coaching at my best, me and my ego don't exist anymore. I'm just an expression of the universe. That to me is spirituality. Is that spirituality for me is a word that defines the energy and that wonderful connectedness that we all have. And I think over the years I've accepted that religion was a way to people to try and capture that feeling, and so I have a lot of respect for people trying to do that. It's just the way they did it didn't work for me. And again, that's where obviously the universal love, the expression of love, the connection through love is a way to express that spirituality, I think.
I remember the phrase I fairly recently read or heard somewhere, that religion tells you the truth, spirituality allows you to find the truth yourself. So it's I liked very much what you said about dissolving into the universe and that emptiness. I suppose it's a kind of being in flow, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's like I always like a bit of a play on my name because it's obviously Waterman. So I like flow references. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It's like you're not. There's no busyness in your head when you're in that space. It just as you said, it just flows. It just comes, and it's natural. Like everything's possible from that space. There is no worries or fears about what you can and can't do. You just be, and it'll work out, right? Doesn't mean you can't direct the flow, of course. You can choose where to want to take the flow, but yeah, it's just natural.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's great. Thank you for listening to this first part of the interview with Rich Waterman. Tune in to the next episode for the second half of it. Thank you very much for listening. Please take a moment to subscribe, rate and review Personal Development Mastery on Apple Podcasts. If you want to know more about me and how I can help you, join my Facebook group Personal Development Mastery. You can either search for it on Facebook or you can simply type bit.ly/PDM group. And until next time, stand out, don't fit in.